July 17, 1942. German and Soviet forces clashed for the first time along the Don River, marking the beginning of the deadliest battle in human history. But this date represents far more than another engagement on the Eastern Front. It marks the moment when Adolf Hitler, ignoring every warning from his generals, made a decision that would doom 300,000 men and seal Nazi Germany's fate. In the summer of 1942, Germany was running out of oil. Hitler's war machine consumed fuel at an insatiable rate, and German reserves were critically low. The solution seemed obvious: capture the Caucasus oil fields in southern Russia. Maikop, Grozny, and Baku together accounted for 84% of Soviet oil production. Hitler told his officers in June, "If I do not get the oil of Maikop and Grozny, then I must end this war." On June 28th, Germany launched Operation Blue, the summer offensive aimed at the Caucasus. Army Group South swept through southern Russia with devastating speed. Stalin had expected another assault on Moscow and positioned his strongest forces to defend the capital. His southern armies were scattered and weak. The Germans advanced like a tidal wave. Soviet forces retreated rapidly, refusing to stand and fight. By early July, Hitler told his chief of staff, "The Russian is finished." This is where everything went wrong. Hitler looked at retreating Soviet armies and saw weakness. What he should have seen was danger. The Soviets were conducting a fighting withdrawal, trading space for time, preserving forces for battles yet to come. But Hitler, convinced of Soviet collapse, decided he could achieve everything at once. On July 9th, Hitler altered the entire plan. Instead of capturing the oil fields first, he ordered the simultaneous capture of both the Caucasus and the city of Stalingrad. His generals were horrified. Field Marshal Fedor von Bock protested. The general staff warned of catastrophic risks. On July 15th, Hitler dismissed Bock from command. On July 23rd, Hitler issued Führer Directive No. 45, splitting Army Group South into two formations advancing in divergent directions, separated by hundreds of miles. This decision violated every principle of warfare. The two army groups could not support each other. German logistics, already stretched to breaking point, would now supply two major offensives simultaneously. Fuel shortages became catastrophic. General Paul von Kleist later complained that if forces had simply continued toward Stalingrad, they could have taken the city in July when it was virtually undefended. On July 17th, advance units of General Friedrich Paulus's 6th Army clashed with Soviet forces along the Don River. The Battle of Stalingrad had begun. To understand the catastrophe that followed, you need to know Paulus. Born in 1890 from a non-aristocratic background, he was a brilliant staff officer but lacked command experience. General Heinz Guderian described him as clever, conscientious, and talented, but noted severe doubts about his decisiveness and toughness. Paulus had never commanded anything larger than a battalion in actual combat. In January 1942, Paulus took command of the 6th Army with 250,000 men. 6 days later, his mentor, Field Marshal Reichenau, died suddenly. Paulus was alone, commanding an army with virtually no combat leadership experience. This meticulous planner who followed orders to the letter was the man Hitler chose to capture Stalingrad. It was a catastrophic mismatch. Through late July and August, the 6th Army pushed slowly toward Stalingrad. Fuel shortages repeatedly halted the advance. By August 23rd, German forces reached the Volga. That same day, the Luftwaffe launched one of the most devastating aerial bombardments in history. Over 1,000 tons of bombs fell on the city. More than 90% of residential buildings were destroyed. Between 40,000 and 70,000 civilians were killed, but Stalin had given his order. On July 28th, he issued Order No. 227, not one step back. Commanders who ordered unauthorized retreats would face military tribunals. Blocking detachments were positioned with orders to shoot retreaters. On September 11th, General Vasily Chuikov took command of the 62nd Army defending Stalingrad. Unlike Paulus, Chuikov was aggressive, decisive, and willing to take enormous risks. He told his commanders, "I'll either keep them out of Stalingrad or die trying." By early September, German forces entered Stalingrad. What followed was unlike any battle the Wehrmacht had ever fought. The ruins became a nightmarish maze where German advantages in armor and air power were negated. Fighting devolved into savage close-quarters combat for individual floors and rooms. Chuikov kept Soviet front lines within 30 meters of German positions, preventing airstrikes without friendly fire. Soviet storm groups infiltrated through underground tunnels. Snipers inflicted devastating casualties. The life expectancy of a newly arrived Soviet private dropped to less than 24 hours. On September 13th, the Germans launched their first major assault on the city center. Despite outnumbering Soviet forces, progress came at terrible cost. The railway station changed hands 15 times in 6 hours. By late September, Paulus had raised the swastika over government buildings, but Soviet defenders still controlled portions of the city. Hitler ordered Paulus to take Stalingrad at any cost. When General von Wiedersheim complained about catastrophic casualties, Paulus replaced him. October brought rain that turned roads to mud, then snow. Supply convoys bogged down. Despite severe shortages and mounting casualties, Paulus continued attacking. By early November, German forces controlled 90% of Stalingrad, but Soviets clung to a narrow strip along the Volga. The Sixth Army was bleeding to death. From August 21st to November 20th, the Sixth Army lost over 60,000 men. While the Sixth Army destroyed itself in Stalingrad, Soviet commanders prepared Operation Uranus, a brilliant counter-encirclement. To protect German flanks, Hitler had relied on Romanian, Italian, and Hungarian divisions. These forces, though numbering hundreds of thousands, were poorly equipped, lacking adequate anti-tank weapons and armor. On November 19th, over 1 million Soviet troops, 894 tanks, and 13,000 artillery pieces launched the offensive. They struck the weak Romanian forces on the flanks. On November 23rd, just 4 days later, Soviet pincers met at Kalak. The encirclement was complete. 290,000 Axis troops were trapped. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein and every senior commander begged Hitler to order a breakout. Hitler refused. Hermann Göring promised the Luftwaffe would supply the Sixth Army by air. It was fantasy. The army needed 300 tons of supplies daily. Luftwaffe field commanders said it was impossible, but Hitler believed Göring and ordered Paulus to hold. In December, Manstein launched a desperate relief attempt, fighting to within 30 miles before being stopped. He begged Paulus to break out. Paulus, paralyzed by Hitler's orders, refused. On December 27th, Manstein withdrew. The men were doomed. The airlift failed catastrophically, delivering only 1/3 of minimum requirements. Men froze in -30-degree temperatures. Horses were slaughtered and eaten. Over 28,000 soldiers died in December alone. By January, Paulus ordered that 12,000 wounded could no longer be fed. Only those who could fight would receive rations. On January 30th, 1943, Hitler promoted Paulus to field marshal, reminding him that no German field marshal had ever surrendered. It was an order to commit suicide. The next day, Paulus surrendered. On February 2nd, the last German forces capitulated. Of 290,000 trapped soldiers, 91,000 entered Soviet captivity. Only 6,000 would ever return home. The Battle of Stalingrad was the bloodiest engagement in human history. Combined casualties exceeded 2 million. Soviet casualties reached 1,129,000. Axis casualties exceeded 800,000. 40,000 civilians died. The destruction of the Sixth Army represented 8% of all German losses during the entire war. An experienced veteran army had been annihilated. The myth of German invincibility was shattered. German forces in the Caucasus retreated, abandoning Hitler's quest for oil. The initiative passed permanently to the Soviet Union. Stalingrad proves that strategic decisions matter more than tactical brilliance. Logistics determines what is possible. No courage can compensate for flawed strategy. The battle was lost not in January when Paulus surrendered, but on July 17, 1942, when Hitler split his forces. Hitler dismissed warnings from experienced commanders. He refused to listen to military professionals who understood the risks. He believed willpower could overcome reality. 300,000 German soldiers paid the price for one man's arrogance. July 17, 1942. The day Hitler's hubris doomed an army and changed the course of human history.